North Arrows offers the industry's most industrial, environmentally safe products on the market. 8 crown dip colors, 22 cresting colors, 10 different stains. You can do carbon shafts to replicate woods, wood arrows, this is a very informal video showing how to crown dip, stain, and crest up wooden arrows with the True North Arrow waterborne system. This is the same system that everyone will use. Right here is water-based stain. I pour a little bit into a container of some sort. Use any rag to wipe it off with. I do not stain underneath anything that is going to be crown dipped. If you're doing a dozen or more, you can stain them just like this. You can apply it as heavy and as light as you want. The faster you wipe it off, the lighter it'll be. It's going to raise the wood grain slightly, and all you need to do is, after it dries about 4 hours, is wipe it off with a 3M pad, not a steel wool, because if it gets steel wool underneath the fibers, it will rust. The reason you don't want to stain underneath your crown dips is simply because some of the adhesives that are out there today can bleed through your crown dip, and it will leave a slight stain mark around your fletchings. That does not bother me personally, but some people are ultra fussy and they do not care for it. So we recommend that you don't do it. Stain underneath your crown dips. And that's about it for the staining, except for just wiping it off to give it a nice even look. Nice thing about this paint is it's water soluble. You can do it right in the house, doesn't have any odors. And that's really about it for wiping it off too. And now we'll set up and do some crown dipping. Alright, so now we're going to crown dip. I use the exact same Archery pass tubes that everyone else can use and purchase. As you'll see, I'm just running a shaft up and down. I leave these paints, crown dip paints and full dip paints, in these tubes indefinitely. It's been in this particular tube about 5 or 6 years. All of the products are pre-thinned with the exception of the cresting paint, because that is as fine a line as you want to make. So I do not thin that. Everything else is thinned for a free dip method. The only way that you can crown dip is to go over the top of these shafts without a gasket system. You'll see it running right down off of this old shaft. We've got it left in some drip trays, some wallpaper trays. Here's the shaft unstained. It is self-priming, industrial finish. It is a commercial finish. It is tough as nails. It's going to raise the wood grain slightly. So I will tell you that after this dries, to go ahead and wipe it down with a 3M pad to knock any of the burrs off. I will put on 2, 3, or 4 coats depending on what color I am doing in the crown dip for vibrancy. I usually go over the top of everything with a clear coat to make sure it's all the same gloss factor, whether it is satin finish or a gloss. Alright, here we're just wiping them down with a 3M pad before we put the final coat of white on. If your product's too thin, you will not have the coverage that you want to achieve. You can give it a 10 count if you like, or until it stops dripping, whatever you feel comfortable doing. I don't take the time to let it completely quit dripping. We've got 3 coats of crown dip on here. We've got a slight little nipple on the end of paint, and we're just going to cut those off very quickly before we put on the nocks. Those will get glued up very quickly, and then I will seal the stained portion of the shafts with True North Arrows clear coat. I'm going to use satin, and we want to seal that up so that if you do any cresting here, it will not bleed into the grain. This is all sealed and primed. Self-primed, 3 coats, gloss finish. You can clear coat over the top of the entire shaft after cresting is done, simply because you have the same sheen factor. Got the satin finish, and to mix it up, just take that shaft and run it up and down. Now you can run it past where it is showing. I like to run it right up past that knock, let it seal. This will make a completely waterproof arrow. The True North Arrows Clear Satin and Gloss is an industrial grade, commercial grade, exterior grade. So it is literally the best product on the market that I've found, and I've done this system so that we can use the same process that we used to use with the gasket lacquers and so forth. If you want to use the clear with a speed dipper and use the gasket system, you're more than welcome to. I like putting it on a little bit heavier and letting it free dip down to the front of the arrow to give it just a tad weight. You're not going to add a lot of weight to these shafts. I've done carbon shafts and only added on 20 grain by full painting them with a dip method of primer and 2 to 3 coats of finish paint plus crown dip and crusting. We've got a spin right crester here. I've got it on a modified jig, so it's a little closer to me. I also have some patterns already preset. And we'll start with the silver. Cresting is pretty basic. Everything that True North Arrows offers is water-based and environmentally safe. And this is really all that we are going to do to each of these arrows. Is give it a pattern. It's pretty basic. And you can get these as elaborate and extensive as you want, or not. The nice thing about the spin right is you can leave it running and feed an arrow in and out of it. And I do like to put on a couple of coats of each color to give it the depth that I'm looking for. And I also like to put a clear coat over the top to protect it. It's not really necessary because the chrome dip paint and all the cresting paints are exterior grade, industrial grade, and the metallic cresting paint is an exterior grade, but it's got a different sheen finish on it. So putting it in and out of snap quivers, I like to put a clear coat on it just to give it a little more protection. I'll let this dry a couple hours usually, only because if you try to push the paint too much, you can get some wrinkling and some lifting that does occur. I do let it set overnight, any of the finishes, or paints I should say, in order to clear dip over the top of any of them. If you would like to do a retro arrow and do a full dip paint, you can. It is self-priming on the wood arrows. As I've stated in the past, if you're going to do it over carbon or aluminum arrows, it's recommended you use the True North Arrows Carbon Prep, which is a no-rinse carbon cleaner. Wipe it on, let it dry, prime your arrow with carbon primer. It's strictly a bonding primer. And then let that dry and put the paint on. Full dip method works the best. Because you're using acrylics, because you're using water-based, waterborne products, which is a tougher finish than just a standard acrylic, you're going to be experiencing a slight different application process than what you're used to if you've used solvent-based products in the past. If you are looking to get something in an ultra smooth finish, this can be achieved by wiping each coat with a 3M pad. The nice thing about the True North Arrows environmentally safe line is if you make a mistake, you can take a damp cloth and wipe it off and start over while you're cresting out your arrows. So now we're just going to add another color. I think I'll do a green metallic next to the silver metallic. I personally like to use a lot of metallic, but that's just me personally. A lot of people don't. Use whatever you like. You can intermix metallic to metallic, but do not mix the cresting paints with the metallics. You can mix all the different cresting paints together if you want to achieve a color that is your own concept. All of these products are pretty much compatible as long as they are dry. You can overlap them, and you can go back over them very shortly just to clean up some edges, as you can see I'm doing. So we've got all our cresting done. Let this dry a day or two because of my time frame. I like to put on 2 to 3 coats of clear dip just to give it a little added extra protection, like I said. And after I get that done, these shafts will be ready to fletch up. And after a few days of cure time on the fletching adhesive, they will be ready to shoot. If you're using bits and burger clamps, you're going to want to lift up the arrow slightly to turn it so that you're not going to have any scraping here on the edge of your arrow. So there's a dozen arrows. Some extra ones that are done. Pink stain. There's natural right here without any stain on it at all. These are full dipped arrows.